We are back to start a fresh week, but close out a strong month in the TradFi markets. We're going to discuss everything that we are seeing playing out right now. We're going to talk some emerging markets as well, maybe a little bit of Japan. Who knows? Might get crazy. Before we get going, hit that like button, subscribe to our channel. Nothing Kevin or I say is financial advice. We're not financial advisors. We're a few guys who love following the markets. So please do your own research before making any buys or sells. Kevin, the markets have had an incredible July. I'm looking at the monthlies for the Nasdaq, for the S&P. They've been on a crazy run. Both of those indices are going to close out 5-month winning streaks. That's pretty nuts. The question on everyone's mind, is this going to continue? Are we running out of steam in this rally? Are investors exhausted? Crypto looks like a barren wasteland. What has your eye as we start another week in the markets?
Yeah, dude. I mean, you and I were just talking about this before the show. Crypto looks fucking dead, right? And here's the thing that's really scary about crypto is that some coins are getting really overbought in the daily very fast, but they're not moving on the weekly closes at all or the monthly closes, which tells me that, okay, we're either going to see a drastic move one way or the other. But the fact that we're seeing it get overbought very fast tells me that it's likely going to be a move to the downside. Again, that's just there's no volume at all in the space. We're not seeing any money come in. We keep seeing Bitcoin just keep going down. Maybe that's setting up for a big squeeze. But for the most part, I'm not very optimistic on how much more room crypto has. But again, I've been wrong before. This could still go to 34, 35K. But right now, it's bleak as could be. And then again, you and I were talking about the monthly closes for a lot of these major indices. Absolutely insane. It's been nonstop growing. Keep an eye on that. But for the most part, monthly close is going to be so important today. So we'll keep that's probably going to be the main focus until we head into what would be Q3 later on in September, October.
We're already in Q3.
And I'm talking about earnings from that. So
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm tweaking.
So let's do a quick tweak. Yeah, we're tweaking, we're twerking, whatever the fuck it is. Let's look at the week ahead. We have some interesting data around the job market. Don't know how much that's going to impact the Fed decision at this point, but we get job openings tomorrow, the JOLTS report as it is. Wednesday, we get the ADP number, which is private sector employment. If you'll remember last month, that number came in more than double expectation at like 500,000 private sector jobs. So kind of, it can be interesting to see what that looks like this month. Then on Thursday, we get initial jobless claims. We get some other productivity numbers. Friday is the non-farm payrolls, the unemployment rate. It's interesting. The unemployment rate is expected to stay the same. So not really sure what to think about that. And then hourly wages as well. So, how are people being compensated? The impact that has on inflation. Then we have some really big earnings, primarily on 2 days, Tuesday and Thursday. Tuesday, I'm going to be looking closely at AMD because that usually moves in line with what's happening with NVIDIA, them also being a chip maker.
Right.
We'll have Pfizer. So if you want to stay up to date on what's going on with boner pills, check out Pfizer. Starbucks, Starbucks and Uber, two that kind of give us a little bit of a look into the health of the consumer. And then Caterpillar, which is, going to give us a picture on construction, everything like that. I saw an interesting story earlier, I believe about Wingstop and how they're being downgraded because the price of chicken wings is starting to rise unnaturally early. Usually chicken wing prices rise closer to the start of football season as well as March Madness, but they're rising even earlier this year. So Wingstop in for a rough road ahead. The really big day is going to be Thursday. We have Apple, Amazon, Airbnb, AB InBev. They just grouped all the A companies together on Thursday, August 8th. Or August 3rd. So that's going to be fun. But that's what we're looking at in the markets ahead. Now, we close out the month today. Markets have about 55 minutes left, and it just looks pretty flat. Like we're hitting. Go ahead.
I don't know. I just looked at the Dow just dropped to pretty much break even. So
yeah, Dow's pretty much break even on the day. Nasdaq is now down slightly, and so is the S&P. What is having a really good month as well is the cost of oil. Oil is having its best percentage gain month since January of 2022. And if you look at it, it's still, even with that on the monthly, it's still in oversold territory.
Oh yeah.
That tells me and you that we have a lot of room to move up on oil, especially as we get closer to winter. If there are possibilities of rising escalations, I sent you after we got done on Friday, there's a real fun tweet saying that, the U.S. is giving, $345 million of aid to Taiwan. That's going to be great for our relationship with China. What could go wrong there? So we have a lot that you could be concerned about on the energy side. I am one that thinks that this winning streak for the Nasdaq and the S&P is going to have to come to an end sooner than later. Nothing goes up forever, and these charts would back that up, especially with how overbought they are. Now, you had talked to me about the amount of money that short sellers have been losing shorting these.
Yeah.
So the question becomes, are you better off trying to short this stuff now? I'd say probably maybe not. I don't know. Or is energy the safer bet as we head into the winter months?
I think there's three plays that could potentially happen. Again, if you want to make money on the way down, obviously it's not a bad thing to do, but you have to be so careful right now because it was the month prior, it was 96, I think it was 96 billion or something like that was lost in short selling. And then last month it was 30, did I say 37? I think it was like 36, 37 billion. So obviously the amount of short positions that are getting liquidated is decreasing, which tells me that short positions are closing. However, there are still a huge amount of people that are still bearish as can possibly be, myself included. But again, this market will absolutely drain liquidity in all directions before it absolutely collapses. And that's just the nature of the game. So maybe, oil looks like there's plenty of room to the upside. I do think that getting into the colder months, we're definitely going to see, that elevate, especially with natural gas too. So energy, not necessarily a bad thing. And then again, you and I were talking before the show, treasuries, right? Bonds, it's a safe play too. If you just don't want to have too much major exposure, lock in some of those rates and then just, I guess, sit and wait, just make some money on the side. There's definitely money to be made and ways to preserve your wealth during times like these where you don't have to necessarily risk too much of losing anything. But yeah, it's a pretty dangerous game, and I think we're getting close to the point where we're going to start seeing some of the moves reverse. I'm not going to say that it's the top of the market for a lot of these major indices and some of these companies, but I do think we have been overbought for such a period of time that, okay, if we're not seeing any more money come in, likely the move is going to be down, right? It's the same thing we're seeing with crypto. So we just have to know when's the right time to get in. I can't tell you that because this has been an absolute, they pretty much made fools of bears this entire corrective wave since the beginning of this year. But eventually, I do think that things are going to turn. And so that might not necessarily be a bad idea. You just have to know when to get in. That's the most important thing.
Absolutely. I want you to talk a little bit about Japan and everything that's happening over there. And then I'll talk a little bit about South America and what we're seeing from Brazil and some of those countries.
Yeah, absolutely. So we talked about Japan right at the end of the show last week because obviously their inflation went up. It was higher than expected, their CPI. And the one thing that I've been seeing all over Twitter, and I did some research into it, is called a yen carry trade. And that pretty much a carry trade is when a nation or investors will borrow from a nation that has extremely low interest rates, and then they'll move it into a market and they'll put it into something that has, a better rate of return. And the difference is pretty much what you make. So a lot of the major yen carry trade is moving, Japanese yen into the US markets, buying equities, bonds, anything that's going to yield a better, return. And then you pretty much just make money on the other side. However, Bank of Japan is buying tons of bonds right now, which tells me that they're trying to preserve the state of the yen. They're trying to keep its value. At the same time, if inflation continues to go up, they're going to be forced to raise rates. And where this completely falls apart is if rates continue to go up in the nation that you borrow against, then the dollar's value is pretty much going to go up. So then you're going to start seeing that people are going to start losing money if they're borrowing in yen and moving into other markets, whether it's the US or Mexico. There's tons of markets that have higher, interest yields right now. So if that starts to happen, then people are going to have to end up selling off pretty much some of those assets. So U.S. equities, U.S. treasuries, you're going to see a mass, pretty much a mass sell-off. It's really good opportunity for a liquidation event. And the bad thing is this could be a global thing. So we could start seeing, markets all across the globe absolutely just get tanked pretty much because people got over leveraged in this carry trade. It's very dangerous sometimes being in Forex. This is pretty much how we're going to start seeing some of the international aspects of this entire global, what I consider a global recession, come to fruition. But yeah, I mean, it's just another thing we have to add on top of, debt. Another thing we have to add on top of, interest rates being extremely high. There's a lot of things that are just adding up to the point where it's like, okay, I don't know how much more the global economy can sustain this much pressure. And this one's actually one that I'm actually really interested in, kind of scared about, because they start to sell, I mean, this could be trillions of dollars in liquidations in the global economy. So keep an eye out for that.
Chicken Little over here, just afraid of everything, Kev. I'm just kidding.
I'm afraid of
It definitely something to
making
keep an
money.
eye on. I did not know this before this morning, but apparently Japan holds more U.S. debt than any other country. I thought it was China. Did not know it was Japan. I learned something new this morning, so that was pretty cool. So obviously, uh, we have to pay attention to what's going on over there. That's a huge part of what's happening with the U.S. economy as well. You can't have one without the other at this point. It's just this is it's easy to get caught up in everything happening in the US, but we have to think globally here. And on that note, getting on Wednesday, I believe the central bank in Brazil is going to make their next policy decision. Expectation is they're going to be cutting by 25 or 50 basis points. So this would be one of I believe the first central bank to cut interest rates since since the hikes began, like, globally. So that's pretty huge. I'm not saying to go out and rush and buy anything from down Latin America. I recently added a Argentinian ETF to my portfolio. I think that there's some good stuff coming there. It's kind of it wasn't a huge bet, but it's kind of a high risk, high reward play, and I was willing to do that. But if you go back and you watch the video we did about Latin America, what was that, back in May or June,
Yeah, it was
something like that?
about a month or so ago.
Yeah, there's I think there's some good takes from that. You can check that out. I still been paying attention to YPF, which is one of the energy companies that I really liked out of Brazil. They've had they're down a little bit on the month. They've had a nice run up. I think they could be positioned well once again to benefit from some of these higher energy prices. So something to keep in mind there.
Yeah, definitely. Again, there's money to be made still in this market, even if it seems like our markets are pretty much drying up if we're talking about crypto. And if we don't want to necessarily get involved in something that seems pretty risky, obviously buying near the top or trying to short something that maybe has a little bit more fuel left in the tank, right? So looking at, globally, there are definitely some opportunities. And again, you're talking about energy. I think energy is going to be so important in the coming months. Probably the next year, I think energy is going to be one of the most important things that we need to keep an eye on. So, maybe going off into some of these emerging markets that are getting out of a technical recession, or at least dropping some of these rates, there's going to be some money that flows in. Quantitative easing, there's definitely potential. And again, these emerging markets, a little scary because they could go one way or the other, really depends. But at the same time, if you're early and you're not, over leveraging yourself in any way, there's definitely money to be made. And it's pretty exciting considering how most of the world, at least from the US, expects this market to be crashing. At least $37 billion worth of investors think that it's going to be crashing.
All right, let's get into the charts now. Let's look at some of the monthly closes. I think let's go TradFi first. So let's start with like Dow, Nasdaq, S&P, and then we'll move into crypto.
Definitely. Let's look at the monthly. It's really wild if you look at this, right? Obviously, the monthly for the Dow is in this parallel channel. It looks like it's breaking above it, but again, if we go into the weekly close, we need to look at the weekly for the time being. We'll consider where it is closing today, but just based off the weekly close, we can see that this entire move here is 100% inside this parallel channel. So nothing has been invalidated for the Dow, right? If we look at the monthly, it just looks that way because the candles are so big and fucking green. It's impossible to negate the fact that the Dow has had a great month. The thing is here, you broke above this level that was key, 34,347, right? This is the first monthly close that we've gotten above it. And this was extreme resistance, but we're also coming up on, an extremely overbought Dow. It's going to be overbought on the monthly in about 44 minutes. So that'll be really interesting to see. And, nothing too much has changed. We could still look at this as a 5-wave count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then we get a 3-wave move up. 1, 2, 3, right? This would be more of like an irregular pattern for the correction, but we got overbought fairly fast for, this moved a little bit here, but most of the move is right here, I think, from where the stochastic. So from March all the way to where we currently are going into August, this has been the majority of the move, right? And we haven't put in a new high. We haven't even came close to it. We just put in a lower high. So that to me still tells me that we're not necessarily out of the woods yet. We are above the 50 moving average. If we start seeing some months, testing that moving average going forward down here, Obviously, that's 4,000 points down from here, but you're probably going to lose this if you're testing this just because there's going to be so much momentum. And again, we got so much money that piled up in here, and we finally broke major resistance. The question is, are we able to sustain that going into the month next? So one thing that would be terrible for the Dow looking forward is if we get a bearish engulfing candle in August. So come August close, see this green candle? We get the same thing, but on the other side, but it comes down a little bit more, and it's red. Pretty much, if you see that, that tells you that the move is it's a reversal move, and it's not necessarily a good sign. Probably signs that there is a top of whatever corrective wave this was. So that's what I'm looking forward to going into August. Obviously, we're going to close in green. We're still in that parallel channel, but if we do start to see a little bit of a reversal come in August, maybe closer towards the end of the month, would not be surprised, and that would probably let us know that September, October are probably going to be extremely volatile months. So that's just looking at it based off price action. Again, it's overbought. It's going to be overbought severely, and if we look at the weekly, I mean, we're pretty freaking overbought there. We're at 196. 50s down here, 200s down here. Probably going to test the 50 moving forward next if we are going to see that bit of a reversal. And we'll look at the dollar after we look at Nasdaq and S&P, but I mean, these charts are just absolutely insane, guys. Let's be real. Look how much these have shot up. This is the weekly for the Nasdaq. If we look at the monthly for this thing, I mean, the monthly was overbought back in start of July. This is at
McDonald's pattern right there. I'm
not loving it. This is lunacy. But yeah, this is the monthly chart, and we're still, oddly enough, in this parallel channel. We're in actually two parallel channels. We talked about this last week. We're in the stupid one that's exponential, like just nonstop, straight up. Looks like it's actually like, I don't know, man. That's like fucking. It looks like the Burj Khalifa, honestly, just going straight up. And then you're finding some resistance on this parallel channel that's going down, which is the more bullish of the channels. This is more the macro one. We're thinking out like a year's term. But yeah, right now, this thing, look how much this stochastic RSI shot up instantly. So from January, let's go from February all the way to July. We went from 12 to 100. You don't necessarily see it move that fast. That's absolutely insane. Just so much money piled in at the beginning of this year. And I mean, it fucking shows, right? McDonald's pattern right here. But yeah, I think we're finding this resistance on this channel. The fact that we're closing this month in 2 hours for the NASDAQ, and you're still within this channel. You can only see it on the weekly again, like finding rejection right at the top of it. It's probably a good sign that we're going to see either consolidation moving sideways, or we're just going to start seeing some weeks close below this. If we start seeing weeks close below this, then obviously that's a really good sign for shorters. But if you start breaking above it, then maybe we're either seeing the continuation of this entire move, or we could also see that we're going to get a bit of a fake out. A fake out's also possible. We have to keep in mind that this market is not doing anything rational right now. It's doing everything to liquidate everyone.
It's crazy to see, like, once again, it's crazy to see how long it's been overbought on the weekly.
Look at the weekly though. Once we get to May, May hits 100, and then from May 30th all the way to where we currently are, it's been 100 for both stochastic RSI meters. You don't see that. That sounds like from Step Brothers. You don't say that, but yeah, you don't see this.
Don't say that.
You don't see this often at all. This is just completely overbought. I mean, this is I can't justify rationally buying in something that's that overbought. I'm sorry, especially on the weekly. Weekly is no fucking small time frame. That's the macro, brother. That's absolutely like, okay, this thing's going to turn around at some point. It's going to make another move. Can't go up much further on the stochastic RSI. The only thing it's going to do is go down. Time will tell. But I think that this is the end of the move, and I think that where we're closing on this monthly is so pin perfect to where these parallel channels are. Just shows you that this game is definitely played out to work to the point where it's like to the last minute you're going to be sweating this stuff, and the answer is right in front of you the entire time.
This is why I'm so excited, I'll say excited and interested to see earnings on Thursday, because Apple and Amazon are two of the biggest companies in the NASDAQ, and if they come in and they beat expectations, this rally could have legs to it still. But if they flop, if AMD tomorrow doesn't have strong earnings, that could be painting a bad picture for when NVIDIA does their earnings, I believe, next month. Yeah, let me check on that real quick. They got 23 days until they do theirs. So, we're going to get a better picture potentially of where the NASDAQ could go based off of earnings this week. As we the new month starts, earnings are coming out for it. Like it's going to be, and these can stay up. It can stay overbought for a while, many months. So it's a weird time, man. Like
I'm such an
it's a
asshole.
time where you're such an asshole.
I
we all know that.
Yeah, I'm just looking at fucking 2008. I'm looking at this S&P chart, but I'm trying to see, like, find similar fractals, and I'm like, all right, top comes down for a correction, moves up, and I'm like, what's 2008 doing over here? And that's all the way, where is it? Right here. And I'm like, all right, top comes up for a little correction. I'm like, what comes after that? Oh, collapse. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I like to look at stuff like that. It makes me perspective. It's important. We should all have it. But that side note, that aside, let's look at how crazy this monthly chart is for the S&P, right? This is absolutely insane, right? We were trading this parallel channel. It's probably not even a parallel channel. Let's get rid of it because it clearly broke above it. So this is some type of corrective pattern, probably.
Just a piss missile.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing I could say about it. It's fucking crazy. But it's also almost as crazy as the one we saw in 2008. But we can see that look at the stochastic RSI meter here. Just this arc here comes down, and then it does the same thing in the other side. It's like I don't know, man, just wild.
Fucking roller coaster.
It really is. I was crying at the top and the bottom, but this is insane to see this here. We didn't put in a higher high, right? We put in a lower high, technically, as of right now. Whether we're finding resistance, maybe there's resistance right here. I really don't know. I can't be honest with you at this point. This is it's been probably one of the more rational charts where you can't really find the pattern that sticks to this. I mean, obviously, I could be in just like every other fucking TA analyst on Twitter or YouTube and just be like, oh yeah, that's resistance right there because it finally hit that. I'm like, yeah, but 2 months from now, it could be like up here. You know what I mean? So I'm not going to tell you exactly where the top of the S&P is. I can tell you that it's going to be extremely overbought at the end of the day today. 46 minutes, we're going to get that close. And the question is there enough, is there enough movement on the macro to the upside where it makes sense to keep pushing up? Or are we going to be finding some resistance here? Or are we just going to find a psychological barrier where traders are just like, you know what, let me just start to take profits. Might be a good idea. We've had a pretty good run so far. But if we're looking on the weekly, we can see there's a lot of resistance right here around this level. We wicked up here, got rejected each time. So we currently are. And if we look at the stochastic RSI meter, we've been at 100 since June 12th. The week of June 12th, we've been at 100 for both meters down here. And that pretty much tells me that we're extremely overbought on the weekly. We're extremely overbought on the monthly. If we look at the daily, we're going to be overbought pretty soon. I mean, we're pretty much just came out of the overbought and we're bouncing right back into it. I think this is the time where we have to look at the macro and the weekly and stuff like that, pull up the monthly, and we have to find those gaps. Those gaps are probably going to be pockets of liquidity where there's going to be positions. A lot of people who went long pretty late in the game, maybe those start to get being taken out. We have to keep an eye on those. I haven't checked any for S&P. There's probably, I could probably go into the daily and just find a bunch right now, right? Pull this up. Gap there. Gap right there. So, I mean, you just do this all day. I'm not going to be fucking picking gaps I'll let the market film itself. Right here, there's actually a ton. There's 1, 2, 3. Usually liquidity is sitting in those. They'll be caught at some point. But for looking at this right now, I think that we are finding some resistance maybe on the weekly. That's the chart we need to be keeping an eye on, even though the monthly is the one that's closing. And, the monthly is going to be overbought. So now we have an overbought weekly and overbought monthly. And the question is, where do we go from here? Maybe August is that quiet month. Maybe it's the one that starts to pull back just a tiny bit. And I think we're going to see more of this escalation lead into September, October. I think that's where we're going to get confirmation of an absolute pullback if we do see one. So just keep an eye on for that. I think that the monthly closes are definitely at key resistances for the indices, S&P more on the weekly as opposed to the monthly close. So that's just important to see. And let's move into the dollar because this one has been absolutely insane. I think the monthly close for the dollar is just as important as the monthly close for oil is. So let's go here. I got to zoom in because the dollar's been doing some crazy shit, right? Look what we did. This month, this is in a parallel channel, going down. This is a bull flag, in my opinion. We broke from this little one that was going up, which makes sense. That's going to be a bear flag. It's always going to break down. We came down, tested the 50 moving average on the monthly, and we wicked straight back up, right? And we're currently sitting at around 101.88. And the monthly is not telling the story of what the dollar's been doing for the past week. So if I go into the dollar here, zoom in, there we are. Dollar's been kicking ass. So once we tested that down there, we started moving up. We got 1, 2. We came back for a little bit of a correction. We bounced right back. We're at the 50 moving average, 102.017. I would have liked to close the monthly above that. That would have been pretty impressive. But at the same time, maybe if we close the weekly above it, that's going to be key. I think that there's a lot of data that's showing favorably towards the dollar. Again, I think CPI and PCE have been extremely detrimental to this price action. But we did see the PCE come in. What it should have done was destroy the dollar, and the dollar actually closed up green on the day. So we have to keep in mind that this is still a pretty strong asset. I think a lot of people are counting it out. Maybe there's a lot of people shorting this as well, but I think that we are in a pretty good position still on the monthly and the weekly for the dollar to appreciate. This wick all the way down here, and then the push back up tells me that we still got some extreme support down here. It's a very bullish sign in my opinion. Question is, where do we end up in the next few months? If we start to see, testing towards 105 in August, that's a good sign for me. If we start closing above that, if we get a monthly close above 105, that's absolutely insanely bullish. You don't understand how good that would be for the dollar and how bad that would be for risk assets. So we have to keep these things in mind, right? So the dollar for right now, that projection that that support that we found down here is, that saved your ass. And I think that the dollar has so much room to the upside because we tested that lower support level, and we just said pretty much screw it. We're not ready to break through that. We're going to go back up. So that's a good sign in my opinion if you want to be bullish on USD. All right. So
let's go oil quickly, and then we'll wrap with Bitcoin and Ethereum, and we'll call it a day.
Definitely. Look at this fucking monthly chart for oil. That's insane, right? It's just been downhill since, when was this? June 2022. You finally found something that where it just shot right up, and you're closing above both on the monthly, the 50 and the 200 EMA. That's amazing. If we look at the weekly for oil, you're closing, well, we closed last week above the 50 moving average. That's absolutely insane. So now this 50 is going to be following, and we're going to start finding support on this 50 moving average. That's given that oil remains, in high demand. I believe that we're starting to see more demand and less supply for oil, and that's necessarily going to bring the price up regardless. So that's another thing that we have to keep in mind. But yeah, this price chart's absolutely insane. I'm loving what I'm seeing with oil, breaking above these major, moving averages. That's great. On the daily, we're probably going to be overbought. Yeah, we're overbought on the daily. But again, if we start to see more demand, less supply, you can pretty much throw out some of these technicals out the window. They will pretty much be following more of the macro trend as opposed to the daily trend. We could stay overbought for a period of time. Look at how the market's pretty much been overbought since the beginning of January, right? It's very possible that this does the same exact thing. And we start to see, that inverse where the dollar goes up, all risk assets come down, and oil goes up because demand is so high for how low the supply is. And again, we're going into a pretty critical part of the year.
So real quick, one thing I just want to riff with you for a second.
Sure.
So there was a report out, Ford had their earnings and they were bad.
Yeah.
And they're really struggling with EVs and everything there. And I just wonder if more and more of these companies start, I know that electric vehicles are a good thing overall. I'm all for it, but I'm just wondering if more and more of these companies struggle to maintain profit margins on electric vehicles, are they going to even keep moving forward for the time being? Or are they just going to, continue to focus on gas powered? And so, does that in turn then move the price of oil up? I'm just kind of talking out loud here. I haven't really given it any thought until just the last 2 minutes, literally.
Well, that's a good point. Also, if you're going to buy an electric vehicle, why wouldn't you buy a Tesla? Right? I think that's just a mentality. It's like Ford. Why the fuck would I buy a Ford and I could buy a Tesla? The only people that are buying Rivians and Ford EV vehicles are people who use Threads, right? People who don't like Elon Musk. It's 100% all it is. So if they want to, I'm not going to make fun of people who use Threads, but if they want to buy that different vehicle, they can. They're going to be a very small minority of the EV population. All right. Everyone who's buying an electric vehicle is going to buy a Tesla. That's why I think they're going to be fine long term. But yeah, I definitely think that if there's more gas vehicles on the road, definitely, there's going to be higher demand for gas. Just natural, supply demand, and just in numbers, it's going to be beneficial. But again, even electric vehicles too, right? We need some form of energy to power some of these charging stations. A lot of that's going to be oil. It's going to be coal. It's going to be stuff like that. So definitely energy is going to be in demand regardless. I think the most important thing going forward, though, is just a note on the Ford. It's their EV vehicles, their numbers were terrible. They're also cutting prices, which shows me that they want some profit as opposed to no profit for everything that they built. So that's not necessarily a great sign. But back to the oil argument. yeah, I do think that, demand for oil is going to go up, whether you have an electric vehicle or not. Whether it's institutional people that need oil to, generate, I don't know, energy in some capacity, or you're going to start seeing just, consumers that need it. Obviously, we're going into winter. It's going to be a huge time where you're going to need energy to, heat your house. Natural gas is going to be extremely vital. Uh, I don't think I think people are still going to be driving their vehicles in the winter. They're going to need it for the snowmobiles and anything like that. I think you're going to see the demand for gas and oil obviously be there. But right now, where we're standing with this, I think there's just low supply. Obviously, a lot of it has to do with OPEC and Russia, but we also have some of the lowest reserves right now of petroleum in the United States. And we have not replenished them. And that's a very dangerous thing because now we're going to be dependent on other nations to export some of these things, such as energy, different forms of it to us. And we're going to have to pay a premium on that. So that's going to be inflationary regardless. But if we look at the oil chart here, just because I want to stay on track with this, I think that if you start closing above $83, like if you start getting this close above here, especially on like a weekly chart or the monthly, 83 is right around here. Your next target, in my opinion, is $93. Right. And this is me just being absolutely technical. This is not me being like, okay, this is the next chart. Russia fucking cuts production. Then you're going to have more demand for less supply. Then it's going to be, 93 for sure. It's like, no, this could also just be like, all right, war escalates or something happens. Oil tanker blows up. And now we're seeing oil trade above 100. It's very possible. It could just shoot up in one candle. But if we're looking at this, rationally, starting to close above here and we start finding support around here, I mean, your next target is just going to be, you're going to keep testing these levels of resistance that were once support. And obviously this right here would be your next target. So I think that, we're not too far off from $90 plus for a barrel of oil in some of these futures contracts. But yeah, it's absolutely insane that oil's had the month that it has. I mean, it's a good month. It's a good week. It's a good day. There's nothing you can really tear down about oil. And if you're an oil baron like we were for a week at one point, you're doing a fucking hell of a
What
job.
a week it was.
You and I were too early, JWeb. We
were way too early.
I was talking about oil.
What was that, back in like March? No, February. That was in February.
It was $63 when you and I were. I was like, man, should I just buy fucking oil contracts? I was like trying to do it on like Pepperstone. I'm like, I can't fucking open up a Pepperstone account. I'm an American. This sucks. I should have fucking did it, man. We'd be rolling in black gold right now.
All right, let's wrap it up with crypto. Let's go to Bitcoin. Crypto is just crypto is just so boring, man. Like we are just in this on the monthly. We're just in this fucking range, and it's like it feels like we're gonna be here forever.
Want to hear the sad part?
You're in the month. It's gonna go down first, and then we'll range forever.
Most likely, it's going to go down at some point. But the question is, are we going to close this monthly outside of the supply zone? We're in the supply zone. So people are still offloading Bitcoin if they can. I haven't seen a lot of transactions where people are moving a lot of Bitcoin or other alts onto exchanges. So that kind of gives me worry that most of the big players have already sold. Maybe they're going to sell a little bit more because they're not the best traders in the world, and they're also not trying to tank the market. And they're trying to get DCA out of the market. It's very possible. But looking at this price action, I mean, this is the monthly. Doesn't look too bad, right? I mean, even if I'm looking at it like this, we could say 1, 2, 3, maybe a corrective pattern. Yeah, obviously this corrective pattern is working. But if this is what I'm looking at, and this is wave 1, this is wave A, wave B, and we're looking for wave C to the upside, that would touch this 35K level. It's possible, but we could also look at this on the smaller time frames and be like, all right, maybe the correct move is there. And yeah, we could see that, all right, there's a 5-wave move in here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now maybe we're starting to move to the downside. It's very possible. I'm starting to lose faith in the 35K zone more and more with how I see low volumes and some of this price. I mean, this just looks like shit. I can't tell you what it's trying to do here. I think if anything, it just looks like deviation. Like I cannot give you a 100%.
Shit.
It does. I can't do it. I can't do it. I'm not going to lie to you all. This just, I mean, obviously lower lows and lower highs, I would anticipate a break to the upside, but are we getting it? I don't know, man. The volumes are so low and I see so much liquidity that's just sitting right here. I mean, all the way down to 26,842. It's very possible we just fill this gap and just take all this money from people who are longing here, right? It's very possible that or not even, they weren't even longing here. They were longing like up here, and it's just like, fuck all these guys, and they just take them all the way down to the 200 EMA and the daily. It's very possible. I mean, one of the dangerous things I think a lot of people aren't paying attention to is this chart over here, this total 3. I'm not really giving too much concern to Bitcoin and Ethereum. I'm looking at this because every single person on crypto Twitter is telling you that we're heading for a bull market, right? I hope that when this breaks, that it's like the French Revolution for fucking influencers, and we're just like not cutting everyone's head off, but we're just like blocking all these motherfuckers because they've been lying to you 100%. This chart looks like shit, guys. This is on the weekly. This closed last night. We're in the overbought. We're at 87.76, and we're starting to break out of this parallel channel right here, right? We're seeing that on the weekly, we're breaking out of this. On the daily, we're, probably get another close today. Tomorrow's close is going to be either in it or out of it. It's going to be really interesting, but we're finding resistance on the 200 EMA for the daily. We're probably going to test down the 50, but that puts us out of the range of this parallel channel. And if we look at the weekly again, we tested the 200 EMA and we got rejected from it. And if we're just, going sideways here, you got no support underneath you. That's going to come down at some point. It's going to be at least to the origin, which I anticipate being between 300 to $291 billion. And what drags altcoins down that much? I honestly couldn't tell you. It could be Binance collapsing. It could be another exchange collapsing. It could be Bitcoin just being like, all right, I'm just going to retake all the dominance. It could be stable coins just pretty much taking all the money, all the liquidity out of everything because nobody knows exactly what's going to happen. That's why we're seeing Tether dominance go up a little bit today. But yeah, we got the 15.
Can we look in a second here? Would you pull up the chart for Link? Because I'm looking at this on my end, and it's so boring. Like it's just this chop over the last 15 months. Like if you look at the monthly,
like this shit, yeah.
Just look at the month. Just look at the monthly for it, and it's just like I'm zooming out. I'm looking at it over, basically the entirety of its existence, and it's just so humdrum and awful.
You know what's sad about?
You have it on KuCoin. I have it on on Coinbase, like it's USD, so it goes back further, and like you can kind of see it's kind of similar to June of 2019 up until like July of 2020 is kind of similar to where we're at now.
Yeah, I mean it's fucking man,
and just how dead it is.
It's boring, man. And look, remember when it was up at look at this. It hit the fucking 50 moving average on the monthly right here. It was up at 846 and now it's at 755. Break even on the day regardless. But I mean, it's just shot up so much this month. If you look at the weekly, we can see it probably better. Yeah. But that's a corrective pattern here. And I don't know, man, this is just boring right here. This is continuation pattern to me. So this thing's going to move whichever way that the entire market moves. And if the market decides to sell, it's just going to follow suit. And the fact that
I've just been sitting on my Link. I think I DCA'd. I'm happy with this. I DCA'd back in December of last year, which was like when it was at its lowest.
Like $5, right?
Yeah, like between 550 and 580 is when I pretty much bought all of my Link, and I haven't touched it. It's just sitting there. I don't plan on selling it anytime soon. I'm not super inclined to buy more of it. If I'll probably start my DCA back up once we get sub 7, because I'm not looking at perfectly time at the bottom, but I'm very confident of going under 7, and that's when I'll get that going again. But yeah, we can look at Matic 2 for a second because we do have our bet. Our bet's inching closer and Matic is inching lower, so I don't know what to think.
Let's put it this way. This is why people don't like me, JWeb, because I'm going to be an asshole here. I'm going to tell you the truth. Look at this parallel channel you're breaking out of, right? This is amazing. You're broken out of it. You tested it and you got rejected. We're currently at 68.99, not even at 69 cents now. Maybe in a second it will be, but right now it is not. And we broke out of this and we're trying to find our feet. We look at this on the weekly. We came up a little bit, but we're even on the weekly. We're closing out of this channel. And here's the best part about it. If we are just looking at this on the short-term time frame, obviously, yeah, it's coming out of it. And looks like it's probably going to find some corrective pattern. There's still room to the upside. But volumes have been so low since that XRP event, the one where it just shot up insane right over here. We can see that we still haven't fully fallen all the way from our macromatic parallel channel that we were putting in back in, May of 2022, and where we finally broke from it back in May of 2023. It was a year-long bear flag that I was calling. I was like, this thing is, when it breaks, it's going to be bad. And that's why I felt so confident in our 30-cent bet for Matic. And honestly, I feel just as confident. I mean, where it broke from in the bottom to where it is currently is, it's only 31%, 30%. But I mean, so take another 30% off the top where we are currently. That puts us at 47 cents. But is there a lot of support below there? I don't know. I think that, 30 cents is probably going to be our next target. And that's why I felt so confident in jumping into that. But we're seeing
Matic is getting rejected harder than I used to when I would ask girls to dance with me at the middle school mixers. Like, this is getting pretty bad.
Yeah, man.
Not feeling great about it.
It's
Not feeling great about Matic. Now I'm thinking back to those middle school days. Not feeling great about that either. But hey, you know what? Here we are.
Yeah, man. I'm gonna pull up BNB last one because again, I'm just keeping up on a lot of these altcoins that just don't look like shit to me, and the charts are so absolutely like conflicting. Like when I look at look how much this is BNB. Look how much the stochastic RSI for the daily has shot to overbought from where it's moved. This is $2.35. Got rejected at the top of this right here at 244, and it's currently only 241.7. What you're doing is you're coiling up. Fuck the parallel channel that I had here. I don't believe in it anymore. I think we're in, a symmetrical triangle, hitting head, ass, head, ass, head, ass. We got a little fake out there, came right back in. Now you're just coiling up towards the end of this. It's going to break in one way or the other. But I'm seeing it's overbought on the daily with very little price movement. It tells me that, there's probably more momentum to the downside than the upside. Other people disagree with me, but that's fine. I understand that. Look at the weekly, right? This looks like it's primed to move up. However, I don't know if it's going to. I honestly think you might test this 200 EMA down here at 220, which would be a double test of what we got back here when the SEC case came out. Speaking of the SEC, they wanted nothing but Bitcoin to be on Coinbase. Really interesting news. Regardless, back to the point, this is probably going to break down and get a double bottom test. And the question is, if you lose that and you go below 210, are you going to lose this entire support zone that's down here? And if you do, I mean, fuck, guys. This is a chicken bone that this entire Ponzi's standing on. It's balanced on. Look at this. From 210 all the way down to I'm gonna be more of an ass. It's $45. 45 is where there might be a little bit more support. So I mean, fuck. Imagine if we drop from 210 down there. That's a 78% drop. If you're using leverage, it's a lot more. So but again, you have to be careful because this is such a weird time where everything is so oversold that it's like, yeah, no shit, let's squeeze the fuck out of this market. But then you look at the volumes and they're dead. So I mean, this is like a mind fuck, really trying to navigate this entire market. You're not seeing the price really do much. I don't necessarily believe that with Binance and everything that's going on that you're gonna shoot up. You might test out some of these lower levels of resistance, like 267 might be the one chart where I could see it pushing up to before it starts to move back down. Maybe we see the weekly react similar to how the daily is, just getting overbought really fast. But I'm seeing this for a lot of alts. I mean, KuCoin, look at this shit. I was saying that once KuCoin fucking started doing KYC, it would be RIP. Look at this, guys. They stopped doing it in July. I think I said July 15th. I think that was the date I said they're going to start doing it. And I got everything off by like maybe 1st of July or some shit like that. And this is where July 15th comes down. I mean, you're already down significant amounts since they even announced it. That was right around here. That's 16%. These exchanges are dying. There's no volume on them, and they're killing themselves with this KYC. They're doing it to themselves. This market's not bullish in any way. You would see more volumes. I'm so bearish as fuck still. I'm upset now that I'm looking at all these charts because I see what I see and no one believes it. But yeah, that's all I got to say. I'm not going to go too much into the monthly closes. Everything looks bad, guys.
Yep.
Coinbase
is up, back closing in on 100. They report on Thursday with how bad the volumes have been. I don't know, man. Maybe that's a potential. Is that a potential short?
Low leverage, guys. That's all I can say.
Is it a Mr. House? Is that a potential sell your gains and then go short with it? I don't know.
Kathy Wood sold hers, right?
I don't give a shit what Kathy Wood does.
I know, but even a fucking blind squirrel finds a nut once in a while. I'm saying she might make a good call finally.
Yeah, she might make a good call finally. But we've seen this pattern with earnings of if they don't deliver fucking perfectly, it takes a huge dump. Dude. And so is shorting Coinbase into their earnings the way to go? I kind of think so.
I forget what I fucking found this tweet the other day. It was talking about corporate profits and absolutely insane how corporate profits were down like 8% or something like that on the year, but everything was like 70+% had beat expectations for these readings. It's like, why the fuck are we buying into these companies that are not profitable right now? The stocks are broken currently. obviously the trend of the market's to the downside in terms of how much people are making. They're not making as much as they were making the year prior. That's not necessarily a great thing to see. However, we're still buying into these markets and these stocks that are like, oh yeah, they beat expectations. They met expectations. And now we're starting to see some of it's like, well, we didn't hit expectations perfectly. And then, it's volatility from there. So I don't know. I'm still, I think corporate profits are more important than expectations, even if going into whatever remaining earnings calls that we have. But it's absolutely insane that, we're down on the year and we're just not talking about it for all these companies. It's so insane. There's very few that are actually profitable this year.
Okay. I think that is going to wrap it up. We went for a while today, but it was all good stuff. It's the monthly close. You love to see it. We got about 15 minutes left in the day. Dow, Nasdaq, S&P are all slightly down. Nasdaq about a quarter of a point right now. Seeing some movement down there. Dollar's looking strong. The VIX is on its way back up a little bit, but overall, I say another successful month. It's going to be interesting moving forward. We do love charts that look like shit. You're goddamn right we do.
Yes, we do.
We'll be back tomorrow. Same time, same place. Going to be looking ahead to some of those earnings coming out, discussing any news in the markets. So thank you, everybody, for watching. As always, Randy, Mr. House, Ace, if you watch this back, anyone else who's been watching the show, really appreciate you being here. If you have not yet, hit that like button down below. Subscribe to our channel, drop a comment, share us out on social, all of that good stuff. We got our guy, Mr. House, coming on to help us with a little bit of housekeeping around here. So, so play on words there. I'll pat myself on the back. Thank you, everyone, once again. Have an awesome rest of your day. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time.
Take care, everyone.